Sustainable solution or sham? Now, if you're here, we assume that you care about reducing your impact, which probably means that you've been replacing many of your everyday items with sustainable alternatives. You know the ones I'm talking about: reusable produce bags, stainless steel water bottles, and bamboo utensil sets. And you wouldn't be alone. A report by First Insight showed that 62% of Gen Z shoppers prefer buying from sustainable brands, and a staggering 73% of them are willing to pay more for sustainable products. Clearly, sustainability sells. But are these things as sustainable as we actually think they are? Howdy everyone, Amber from Sustainable Jungle, where we share sustainability tips, tricks, hacks, products, brands, and stories to better our planet. And there are a whole lot of ways out there and things that can help us better our planet, along with a whole lot of things that claim to help us better our planet, but actually just don't. Or at least not to the extent that we've been led to believe that they do. Reusable bags? Are these actually better than plastic bags? PVA pods? Are they as biodegradable as brands claim? Does that mean that there's never an excuse or a scenario in which these things are the better option? These are all really valid questions. So we're going to tackle them one by one to see if your valiant sustainability efforts are as verifiably sustainable as you hope. Let's start off with an easy one. Now, if you've been trying to cull plastic jug consumption from laundry day, you may have run into a new-to-you material, PVA, or polyvinyl alcohol. It's used by all kinds of pod and sheet-based laundry and dish cleaning products. And while yes, there is absolutely something to be said from switching to waterless formulas that deliver a more concentrated clean and reduce emissions associated with shipping heavier water-based jugs, the problem is that these may not actually be as zero waste as all these companies would have you believe. So here's the thing. PVA is plastic. End of story. Just because it's a dissolvable plastic does not change that core fact. PVA begins life as ethylene, the same building block for PET, polyethylene, and polystyrene, or plastics number 1, 2, 4, and 6. The ethylene is polymerized, i.e. combined, to become polyvinyl acetate, which is then dissolved in ethanol or methanol along with heat and a catalyst. Sounds natural, right? Where PVA is unique to the types of plastic that you're most likely familiar with is that it is water-soluble and, under optimal conditions, biodegradable, which is why it's being used in all kinds of personal care, medical, household, and industrial products. But let's return to that under optimal conditions bit. Yes, PVA and PVOH can fully biodegrade in proper conditions, which happen to be really specific in this case. The trouble is that the vast amount of wastewater disposal and treatment plants do not meet these conditions, and thus all that pod residue isn't actually breaking down, but just making it back into the environment. One study reports that about 61% of PVA ends up in the environment via the sludge route, and about 15.7% via the aqueous route. So if you put your math cap on for a moment, means a paltry 23% of it is actually properly biodegraded. Somehow, I think if these laundry sheet companies printed that on their packaging, biodegrades 23% of the time, I don't think they'd sell as well. That means that based on current use and consumption of PVA-based products, about 8,000 tons of it is being washed into the environment annually in the US alone, where it will then disturb aquatic life, alter soil conditions, and ultimately possibly affect human health. Now, while PVA is generally considered to be non-toxic by the Environmental Working Group with a low hazard score of 1, I don't know about you, but I don't want it making it back into my drinking water or food chain. So, are these little pods better than traditional number 2 plastic-filled jugs with chemicals? Our current attitude is yes, but only as a last resort. The way I see it, at least many of these companies are substituting harmful chlorine and bleach for natural plant-based cleaning enzymes, but on the whole, powders, uncoated tablets, or natural refillable liquids are a far more sustainable bet. Now, before we get to the next one, you do know that biodegradable and compostable are not the same thing, right? Now, all compostable things are biodegradable, but not all biodegradable things may necessarily be considered compostable, as they may not be able to break down in a fast enough manner in a proper environment. Hence why biodegradable trash bags are some of the most grossly misunderstood and misused items around. And just because something is biodegradable doesn't mean it's benign if you just treat it like a regular trash bag and throw it in the dumpster. You see, as bad as plastic is, and trust us, plastic is bad, organic waste going to landfills is actually somehow even worse. And that's because when organic material decomposes anaerobically, or without oxygen, as it will do when buried under tons of trash, it releases methane gas, which is 25 times more potent than CO2. So all these people that think they're making a better choice by opting for bioplastics are actually just creating a whole different issue. You should only use compostable trash bags if you actually plan on composting them. If the landfill is its destination either way, you'd be much better off to purchase recycled plastic bags. And this goes for all kinds of bioplastic, including garment bags and other packaging that we're seeing more and more of. While yes, some of it is certified home compostable, the vast majority of it isn't. So unless you have access to industrial composting facilities, as only about 4 million US households do currently, considering we have a really pitiful composting infrastructure here, it's still going to the landfill and it's going to emit methane gas. Next, let's bag on bags. If you caught our video a couple weeks back on whether the plastic-free movement is a sham or not, you may remember that we talked about the life cycle comparison between paper, plastic, and reusable bags. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm going to link to it in the description below, as it's well worth the watch. So what's the deal with bags? Should we use reusable ones? Should we stick to plastic and reuse them multiple times? What is actually the best choice? Unfortunately, as with most things, the answer is about as opaque, which is to say not very, as most single-use grocery bags these days. On one hand, plastic bags are made of petroleum, and they'll never truly break down in the environment, instead contributing to landfill and microplastic pollution. On the other hand, alternatives like paper and cotton bags are also pretty resource intensive, and they rely on quickly depleting natural resources, namely arable farmland and trees. There's also energy, water, and emissions to consider. Paper bags, for instance, create twice as many greenhouse gas emissions, require about 30 times as much water, and 70% more energy, which kind of makes you think twice next time the cashier asks you paper or plastic. But perhaps the worst options are those woven or plasticky colorful options that you see lining checkout aisles like this guy here. And maybe you've been tricked into buying one because you forgot your bags and figured that the $2 was worth it to save the environment. But these bags are actually the worst offenders of all, as they're still made with plastic, probably propylene specifically. So they don't solve the plastic and disposal issue, and they're really not all that much more durable than single-use plastic bags that they aim to replace. Look, I'll own up to it. I've owned these. I still try to use them, the ones that I have. I've bought them, and it seems like anytime I have, they break. Whether it's a hole in the bottom or handles that rip off in a matter of months. So more recently, I've switched to cotton canvas totes, and do these still have their issues? Absolutely. The Danish EPA found that producing a single cotton tote bag would need to be used 7,100 times in order to offset its environmental impact compared to a plastic bag used just once. Will I ever use that one bag that much? Maybe. With how durable mine are, I can safely say that I will continue to use these for years and years, and that's really what anything sustainable boils down to. Still using it as much as absolutely possible without needing to replace it. Our next sustainable question mark item is paper straws. Now you may remember back in 2018 when Starbucks began phasing out plastic straws in favor of paper ones. And whether you love them or hate them for it, it's a decision that's worth a second look. Was it actually a sustainable move? Firstly, the production of paper straws involves a significant resource use. The paper industry is a major consumer of both water and energy, and it contributes to deforestation, obviously. In addition, the manufacturing process often involves chemical treatments to make the paper and straws water resistant and durable. After all, you couldn't just roll up a regular piece of paper and drink through it. And these chemicals can include glues, dyes, and other additives which may be harmful to the environment and may even leach into your beverages as you're drinking them. Plus, I don't know if you've ever actually used one, but for me, nothing ruins my appetite for an organic smoothie faster than a straw that's soggy about 3 minutes into it. A lot of people resort to using multiple paper straws for one drink purely because of this fact, and that's only adding to their impact. So while paper straws are biodegradable, their actual compostability can be a little bit more complex. You see, many composting facilities have specific requirements, and if straws are coated with certain chemicals or dyes, as we've just noted that many are, they may not break down as easily and would then end up just becoming methane-producing organic landfill waste, just like those bioplastic bags we warned you about. Ultimately, while paper straws are a better option than plastic in terms of reducing long-term pollution, they're not without their environmental drawbacks. In the words of an article in The Atlantic, paper straws are a crummy solution to a problem that need not exist in the first place. And that really just sums it up. The best choice for sustainable sipping is to use reusable straws made from this metal one, silicone, or glass, or just no straws at all. So the best choice for sipping sustainably is to use reusable straws made from durable and indefinite materials like metal, silicone, or glass, or better yet, just use no straws at all. Next up, we have something that may be a little bit upsetting to some vegans out there, but almond milk. Almond milk has become a really popular alternative to dairy milk, often touted as a sustainable and healthy choice. But in reality, it's actually a pretty nutty solution. First, let's talk about water. It takes approximately 15 gallons of water to produce just 16 almonds. That's 1.1 gallons per single almond. Considering that 80% of the world's almonds are grown in California, a state frequently plagued by droughts, this water usage is incredibly unsustainable. Next, there's the issue of pollination. Almond farming relies heavily on commercial beekeeping. Every spring, about 70% of commercial bees in the US are used to pollinate almond crops. This intense demand for pollination can stress bee populations, contributing to the decline of these essential pollinators. This is only compounded by the fact that, of course, almond farming is also associated with heavy pesticide use, which not only affects the health of farm workers and local communities, but also leads to soil degradation, water pollution, and the outright death of all those insect species that it literally depends upon. So, while almond milk may be a better option than dairy in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it's important to consider that there are other environmental impacts and opt for less environmentally stressing alternatives, like oat milk. Or if you drink animal milk, try to source it directly from local farmers, which is what I do. Next up, we have vegan leather. First things first, we are not denying that traditional leather is one of the most impactful materials in the fashion industry, both from a sustainability aspect and an ethical one. Between all the animals killed for their hides, either directly or indirectly, and the chromium and heavy metals used in the tanning process, we absolutely believe that vegan leather offers a much more sustainable solution to the traditional leather industry. But there's a big ol' cow-sized caveat to all that. Not all vegan leathers are created equally. In fact, some of them are created so unequally that I wouldn't touch them if you paid me to. Namely, PVC-based microfiber vegan leather. You know the stuff. It yields that really shiny, plasticky feeling faux leather, and no wonder. It's plastic. And not just any type of plastic, but the worst type of plastic in existence. Polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, releases toxic chemicals into the environment in its production phase, and it requires plasticizers like endocrine disrupting phthalates to make it flexible enough to get them into those pleather leggings. According to the WHO and US Centers for Disease Control, PVC has been linked to all kinds of health problems, like cancer, developmental disorders, infertility, type 2 diabetes, heart and liver disease, CNS, other respiratory disorders, the list goes on and on. Now, on the environmental side, there is literally no safe way to dispose of PVC. Recycling it requires a bunch of equally bad chemicals, leading to an abysmal 0.25% recycling rate. And trashing it means that it's just going to leach into the earth for practically centuries. So PU, or polyurethane, is still plastic, and it's still associated with some chemical-intensive production processes, but this form of vegan leather is a lot better because it can at least be recycled mechanically, i.e. through shedding into small bits, rather than chemically. So if you have your heart set on some leather lookalikes, explore some of the newer plant-based leather alternatives instead. My personal favorite is cork because it's also super sustainable to grow and requires no plastic blended in like some other plant leathers do, such as cactus or apple leathers like this one here. Still, if that's all that's available to you, we say a little bit of plastic is a whole lot better than a lot. Next up, bamboo viscose. We talk about bamboo viscose ad nauseum on our website, and the reason is it is probably the most greenwash material out there. I cannot tell you how many brands I see on the daily claiming to make eco-friendly bamboo fabrics without giving any specifics about what that means. We have a whole article on this, which I'm going to link to below if you want some more details, but here's a quick rundown. Bamboo is a highly sustainable plant. It grows really quickly, consumes tons of carbon as it does, requires very little water, and can be harvested without killing the base plant. But just because something starts out as sustainable doesn't mean it stays that way. And it's when we have to turn that bamboo into something soft and flexible that we would like to see some major improvements. The process to create bamboo viscose uses some truly terrible chemicals. We're talking caustic soda, carbon disulfide, sulfuric acid, and all of these have some pretty terrible health impacts on both humans and the environment, which is about where 50% of these chemicals end up. Now, that's bamboo viscose, but bamboo lyocell is a little bit of a different story. So lyocell is really just another type of semi-synthetic fabric produced from different types of wood pulp, bamboo being one of them, but it's different from viscose or rayon because it's made in a closed-loop system. So at the very least, upwards of 95% of those toxic chemicals and water used to go with them are recaptured and then reused for future production rather than released into the environment. What's the TLDR here? Unless a brand tells you exactly how their bamboo fabric is made, specifically in a closed-loop process, avoid it. It's likely just as greenwash as those green bamboo forests. And if you can opt for Tencel lyocell or hemp fabric instead, please do. The last item I want to talk to you about today is paper coffee cups. You may think that because cups are paper that they can go straight into the recycle bin or the compost bin. No harm done, right? While you can and you should recycle the lid, which is plastic, unfortunately, most takeaway cups are actually coated in a waterproof plastic as well called polyethylene. This makes them both non-recyclable and non-compostable, even if it's just one cup. With the number of people who buy a beverage each morning, Planet Ark estimates that 50,000 coffee cups go into landfills every 30 minutes. And that's just in Australia. We're not even going to get into the US numbers. A solid reusable tumbler is a much better choice. Note that I said a tumbler, not a whole collection of them. Because while we're talking about unsustainable reusables, please don't buy into those Starbucks takeaway cup trends, which have somehow just brought all the evils of fast fashion trendiness to our caffeine addictions. Buy one, use it, continue to use it for as long as you possibly can. So, are we telling you to ditch these things in favor of their conventional counterparts? Not necessarily. These things can be sustainable, but due to all kinds of greenwashing and misunderstandings about their applications, we tend to just misuse them a lot. And as with anything, we still need to practice conscious consumerism. Just because something is sustainable doesn't give us permission to purchase and use it with reckless abandon. A well-loved reusable water bottle can have a tremendous positive impact, but if you buy a new one every year to keep up with trends, you're not really doing any better than if you just opted to use disposable plastic water bottles every single day. In other words, most of these things are not inherently sustainable or unsustainable. It largely depends on us, the consumer, understanding that fact and being conscious of when and how often we choose to consume these things. Now I want to pass the mic over to you. What do you think about the things that we've chatted about here today? Do you still use them? And if so, how are you taking steps to ensure that you're using them sustainably? Are there any other unsustainable, sustainable stuff that you want to see us chat about in the future? Please let me know down in the comments, and while you're down there, be sure to give this video a like and our channel a subscribe so you can stay in the low impact loop on all things sustainable and not. So once again, this is Amber from SJ, and farewell, folks.